Elena Marlowe knew every sound the Bellhaven Public Library made after closing. The tired sigh of old pipes, the soft settling of oak shelves, the faint rattle of rain against the arched windows above the history room. The knock at the locked front door did not belong. She froze beside the returns desk, one hand resting on a stack of children's books. The clock read 9:17 p.m. Everyone else had left more than an hour ago. 3 knocks came again. Measured, patient. Not the knock of someone seeking shelter from the storm. Elena crossed the marble floor without turning on the lobby lights. Her reflection moved beside her in the black glass. Dark curls pinned loosely at her neck, cream cardigan pulled over a green dress, sensible shoes whispering against stone. A man stood beneath the awning. Tall, black overcoat, no umbrella. Rain traced the hard lines of his face, but he didn't seem to notice. Behind him, 2 dark sedans idled at the curb. Their headlights were off. Elena stopped several feet from the door. "We're closed." "I know." His voice carried through the glass. She glanced toward the security alarm panel. Armed, silent. "You'll have to come back tomorrow. I need access to the Bellhaven archives." "No one gets archive access after hours." His eyes moved to the brass nameplate pinned above her heart. Elena Marlowe, Special Collections Librarian. "I was told you make exceptions. You were told wrong." For the first time, something shifted in his expression, not annoyance, interest. Then he raised one gloved hand and pressed an old library card against the glass. Elena's breath caught. The card was grey with age, its edges softened by decades of handling. Across the top, stamped in faded blue ink, were the words Bellhaven Memorial Library. That name had not been used since the fire of 1987. Beneath it was a handwritten signature, Adrian De Luca. Elena looked at the man again. Everyone in Bellhaven knew the De Luca name, though respectable people pretended otherwise. Shipping companies, hotels, construction firms, charity galas with politicians smiling beside men, no one dared investigate too closely. And at the center of it all stood Adrian De Luca, cold-blooded strategist, heir to an empire built in shadows, a man rumored to know what his enemies planned before they did. The man outside removed one glove. A silver signet ring caught the streetlight. Elena unlocked the door. Only the first lock. The chain remained fastened. "Where did you get that card?" "It belonged to my grandfather." "Why bring it here?" "Because someone died for what he hid in this library." The rain filled the silence between them. Elena's fingers tightened around the lock. "Who died?" "My archivist." His answer came without hesitation, but his jaw hardened after he said it. Elena studied him through the narrow opening. Powerful men often expected doors to open because they stood before them. Adrian De Luca had come with cars, guards, and a name that frightened half the city. Yet he had knocked. That mattered. She closed the door, removed the chain, then opened it fully. "1 hour," she said. "You follow my rules." One of the men near the sedan stepped forward. Adrian lifted 2 fingers. The guard stopped. "I'll go alone." Elena locked the door behind him. Water darkened his coat, but he made no move to remove it. Up close, he seemed even more controlled. Not calm. Control was different. Calm belonged to people who felt safe. Adrian carried stillness the way another man carried a weapon. She led him past the circulation desk. No calls, no photographs, no touching documents without gloves. "I understand. And if you threaten me, I lock the collection room and trigger the alarm." His gaze moved to the red button beneath the desk. "You won't need it. That depends on you." A nearly invisible curve touched the corner of his mouth. They entered the oldest wing of the library, where the air smelled of dust, leather, and glue. Elena switched on the green-shaded lamps one by one. Pools of warm light spread across the long tables, while darkness remained gathered between the shelves. Adrian removed his wet coat and draped it over a chair. Beneath it, his charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, no visible weapon. That did not reassure her. "What exactly are you looking for?" she asked. "A ledger. Financial?" "Not in the usual sense." "Then what does it record?" "Debts." Elena folded her arms. "Money?" "People." Somewhere in the building, a pipe groaned. Adrian approached the locked gate leading into special collections. "My grandfather used this library privately before the fire. I believe he left something here the night he disappeared." "Your grandfather didn't disappear. He died in a boating accident." That was the official story. Elena looked toward the rows of archive boxes beyond the gate. She knew the story of Vittorio De Luca's death. Everyone did. His body had never been recovered, and 3 months later, his oldest son had taken control of the family businesses. Adrian's father. "What makes you think the ledger is still here?" "My archivist found a reference in a sealed estate file." Adrian reached into his jacket slowly and produced a folded sheet of paper. "He sent me this photograph yesterday morning. By evening, he was dead." Elena accepted the page. It showed a handwritten note in Italian. Beneath it was a sketch of a bell inside a crown. She had seen that symbol before. Not in a De Luca file. In her mother's belongings. The memory came sharply. Elena, at 12 years old, kneeling beside an open cedar chest after her mother's funeral. A pendant wrapped in linen. A tiny silver bell engraved beneath a crown. Her aunt had snatched it away before Elena could ask what it meant. She kept her face still and returned the page. What did the note say? Adrian watched her carefully. "You recognize the symbol." I asked what it says. "It says, where the city keeps its memory, the bell guards the names of the living and the dead." Elena unlocked the gate. Rows of shelves stretched beyond them, loaded with boxed newspapers, private letters, city maps, and records no one had digitized. The archive was her kingdom. Here, politicians became signatures, scandals became brittle clippings, and lies survived only until someone opened the right box. She pulled on cotton gloves and gave Adrian a second pair. "You said the library burned in 1987, he said. "The West Wing burned. Most of the archive survived. Who was working here then?" Elena hesitated. "My mother." Adrian's hands stopped halfway into the gloves. "What was her name?" "Margaret Marlowe." The reaction was small, a narrowing of the eyes. A breath held a fraction too long. "You knew her," Elena said. "No, you knew the name. My grandfather mentioned a Margaret in his private correspondence. Then your family records may tell us more than mine. My family records are why a man is dead." He said it without drama. That made it worse. Elena turned toward the card catalogue. The old wooden drawers had survived the fire, their brass handles polished by generations of hands. Most visitors considered them decorative. Elena knew better. She searched under De Luca, Vittorio. Nothing. Then Bellhaven Memorial. Nothing again. Adrian stood behind her, silent. She checked the accession records from 1985 to 1988. Donations. Transfers. Restricted materials. One card had been inserted backward. Elena pulled it free. No title, no donor. Only a call number written in her mother's handwriting. B137. Adrian leaned closer. Elena smelled rain and cedar on him. "What is it?" he asked. "A location that shouldn't exist." The archive had 12 basement ranges. No 13. She walked toward a narrow staircase behind the newspaper cabinets. Adrian followed at a respectful distance, though she could feel his attention tracking every doorway, every shadow, every sound. At the bottom, the basement lights flickered awake. Concrete walls, metal shelving, bound newspapers stacked behind wire cages. Elena stopped in front of Range 7. A rusted plaque read B12. She ran her gloved fingers along the wall beside it. Hollow. Adrian noticed the change in sound when she tapped the panel. "Move back," he said. "This is my archive, and someone may have killed to keep this hidden. So you believe there could be a trap? I believe dead men are rarely the final warning." He stepped in front of her and examined the seam. His fingers found a recessed latch beneath the lowest shelf. The wall released with a soft click. Cold air slipped through the opening. Behind it was a passage barely wide enough for one person. Elena took a flashlight from the emergency hook. Adrian held out his hand. "No, you don't know what's inside. Neither do you. That is exactly why I go first." His tone was firm but not commanding, a distinction Elena did not miss. She handed him the flashlight. He entered the passage. The hidden room beyond was small, lined with brick, and untouched by the library's renovation. A wooden desk stood beneath a dust-covered lamp. On the wall hung a photograph of 6 people outside the old library entrance. Elena stepped beside Adrian. Vittorio De Luca stood at the center. Her mother stood 3 places away, young, smiling, alive. A man beside her had one arm around her shoulders. Adrian moved closer to the photograph. The man was his father. Elena felt the floor tilt beneath her. "My mother knew your family." Adrian's face had gone still in a way that felt dangerous. "My father told me he had never entered this library." On the desk sat a black ledger. No dust covered it. Elena saw that first. Adrian saw it a second later. "Someone has been here," they said together. He reached for the ledger, then stopped. A thin wire ran beneath the cover. Adrian caught Elena around the waist and pulled her back. The lamp exploded. Glass sprayed across the room. Darkness swallowed them, followed by the sharp smell of burned wiring. Elena's back pressed against Adrian's chest. His arm remained locked around her, shielding her from the desk. Neither moved. Footsteps sounded in the passage. Not approaching, retreating. Adrian released her and ran after them. Elena seized the fallen flashlight. Its beam shook across the bricks, then steadied as she forced her breathing under control. On the floor beside the desk lay a torn scrap of paper, dislodged by the blast. She picked it up. Her mother's handwriting covered one side. "Do not let Adrian learn who opened the vault." Elena stared at the sentence. Adrian, not his father, not his grandfather, him. Footsteps returned. She folded the note into her palm as Adrian emerged from the passage, his expression carved from ice. "They're gone," he said. The rear service door was unlocked. "No one knows that door exists, except library staff. Then one of your colleagues is involved. Or one of your people." His gaze held hers. "Did you find anything?" The note seemed to burn against her skin. Elena had spent her life preserving the truth. For the first time, she understood why some truths were hidden. She slipped the paper into her sleeve. No. A phone vibrated inside Adrian's jacket. He answered without looking away from her. "What?" His silence stretched. Then his face changed. Not fear. Recognition. He lowered the phone. "My driver is missing." From somewhere above them came the slow creak of the archive gate closing. Then the lock clicked. The lock turned again. Elena crossed the hidden room in 3 strides and pressed her ear to the passage wall. No footsteps followed. Whoever had sealed the archive gate had moved quickly, or knew another way out. Adrian checked his phone. No signal. There's never signal in the basement. Convenient. For books, perhaps. His eyes shifted toward her sleeve. Elena kept her arm relaxed. The folded note rested against her wrist like a second pulse. Adrian picked up the fallen flashlight and aimed it toward the passage. Is there another exit? Not from this room. Then we go back to the gate. They stepped through the narrow opening. The emergency lights cast the basement in a dull red glow, turning every shelf into a row of black teeth. At the top of the stairs, the iron archive gate stood closed. Elena pushed the release bar. It did not move. The internal latch has been jammed, she said. Adrian knelt near the lock. A slender steel pin had been driven into the mechanism. Professional? Not necessarily. Anyone familiar with this gate would know where to place it. He removed a thin metal card from his wallet and worked it into the gap. Elena watched his hands. You carry lock tools. I carry solutions. That sounds like something a criminal says. It is also something a locksmith says. You are not a locksmith. His mouth almost curved. The pin shifted. Above them, something heavy struck the floor. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Adrian rose immediately. That came from the West Reading Room, Elena said. Stay here. No. Elena. It was the first time he had said her name. Low, controlled. Too familiar for a man she had met less than an hour ago. She folded her arms. You don't know the building. I know how to deal with intruders. And I know which staircase collapses if you put your full weight on the third step. His gaze held hers for a moment. Lead. She nearly smiled. The gate opened with a metallic snap. They climbed in silence. At the landing, Elena stopped beside the electrical cabinet and pulled down a brass lever. The main lights went out. Adrian looked at her. If they know the library, she whispered, they'll expect us to use the central corridor. The old staff route is behind the poetry shelves. You shut off the lights to protect us? I shut them off to protect the books. You're a secondary benefit. He followed her through the dark. Their shoulders brushed as they slipped behind a movable bookcase. The passage beyond had been built for staff in the 1920s, when wealthy patrons preferred not to see carts or workers crossing the public halls. Elena moved by memory. Adrian moved without sound. At the end of the corridor, a narrow opening looked into the West Reading Room. A chair lay overturned. One of the tall windows stood open despite the rain. Water spread across the wooden floor. A man was kneeling near the fireplace. His hands were raised. Adrian's driver. Blood marked the collar of his white shirt. Behind him stood a masked figure holding a gun. Elena's breath caught. Adrian's hand closed around her wrist, not hard enough to hurt, only enough to stop her from moving. The masked man spoke. Mr. De Luca. His voice carried clearly through the room. I know you're still inside. Adrian leaned close to Elena's ear. Stay behind the wall. She felt him release her. Before she could object, he stepped into the room. The gun swung toward him. Let him go, Adrian said. The driver kept his eyes on the floor. The masked man gave a short laugh. You sound like your father. Adrian stopped. Elena saw the change in his posture, the slight angle of his shoulders, the way his attention narrowed. You knew my father. I knew what he became. The masked man pressed the barrel against the driver's neck. Adrian's face remained unreadable. What do you want? The ledger. It was trapped. It was protected. By you. By someone smarter than both of us. The driver flinched. Adrian's eyes dropped to the movement. The masked man noticed. So loyal, he said, even now. Elena looked closer. The driver's hands were raised, but his wrists were not tied. There was blood on his collar, yet no visible wound. He was not a hostage. He was waiting. Elena reached for the heavy brass bookend resting on a nearby shelf. The driver lunged, not at the masked man, at Adrian. A knife flashed in his hand. Elena threw the bookend. It struck the driver's wrist. The blade skidded across the floor. Adrian turned, caught the man by the shoulder, and drove him into the edge of a table. The driver collapsed with a groan. The masked man fired. The bullet shattered a lamp inches from Adrian's head. Elena dropped behind the wall. Adrian overturned the table and dragged the driver down with him. Another shot struck the wood. The masked man ran toward the open window. Elena moved before she could think better of it. She pulled the fire alarm handle. A brass bell exploded through the building. The masked man looked up instinctively. Adrian crossed the room. He caught the gunman's coat as the man reached the window. Fabric tore. The gun fell, but the intruder swung an elbow into Adrian's ribs and disappeared onto the exterior ledge. Adrian followed him to the window. A rope hung against the stone wall. By the time he looked down, the man had vanished into the storm. Elena approached the driver, who lay breathing heavily beside the table. His name was Thomas Vale. She knew it from newspaper photographs. He had worked for Adrian for more than a decade. Adrian crouched beside him. "Why?" Thomas laughed through the pain. "You still think loyalty is inherited. You were in my home, and you never saw me. You sent the photograph from the estate file. I sent what I was told to send." "By whom?" Thomas looked toward Elena. His smile made her skin go cold. "Ask the librarian." Adrian followed his gaze. Elena felt the hidden note against her wrist again. "What does that mean?" Adrian asked. Thomas closed his eyes. Adrian grabbed his collar. "Who gave you the order?" The driver's voice dropped to a whisper. "The woman in the photograph." Elena stared at him. "My mother is dead." Thomas opened his eyes. "Are you sure?" The fire bell continued ringing. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Then the front doors burst open. Men in dark suits entered the lobby. Adrian's security team. He rose and issued commands with frightening calm. "Secure every exit. Search the roof and the alley. Thomas goes nowhere alone." Two men lifted the driver. Thomas glanced back at Elena as they dragged him away. "You have her eyes," he said. Adrian waited until the room cleared. "Tell me what you found downstairs." "Nothing." "You hesitated." "I was trapped in a hidden room with a wired ledger." "That is not why." Elena looked toward the broken lamp. Rain hissed against the open window. "I saw the photograph." "So did I. My mother knew your father. And your mother may still be alive. She died when I was 12. Did you see her body?" The question struck harder than she expected. Elena remembered a closed casket, her aunt's trembling hands, the smell of lilies, adults speaking in lowered voices whenever she entered the room. "No," she said. Adrian stepped closer, not threatening, searching. "Thomas wanted you to question your past. That may be the entire purpose." Or he told the truth. Men like Thomas mix truth with poison. It makes both harder to recognize. Elena looked at his face. "How do you know?" "Because my father taught him." The anger in Adrian's voice was quiet enough to be mistaken for indifference. It was not. "You said your father lied about coming here," Elena said. "He lied about many things." "But you believed him." Adrian's gaze shifted toward the photograph still hidden below the library. "When I was 10, someone tried to kill me outside my school. My father found the man responsible in 3 days." Elena waited. "He brought me to the warehouse, where the man was being held. He told me mercy was simply fear wearing clean clothes. What did you do? I walked away. A siren sounded in the distance. Adrian looked toward the window. My father never forgave me. Elena studied the line of his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders. She had expected arrogance from him, perhaps cruelty. Instead, she saw a man who had spent his life measuring every choice against a lesson he had refused to learn. Walking away was not weakness, she said. His attention returned to her. No one in my family believed that. I'm not in your family. Something passed between them. Not trust. Not yet. But the first narrow bridge toward it. One of Adrian's men entered. Police are 2 minutes out. Adrian nodded. Remove Tomas through the service tunnel. Elena stepped forward. No. His man stopped. Adrian turned slowly. No? You don't get to abduct a man from my library. He tried to kill me. And the police can arrest him. The police will release him before sunrise. You don't know that. I know who signs the commissioner's private checks. Elena stared at him. Then expose them. You think evidence survives long enough to reach a courtroom? It survives here. She gestured toward the shelves. Records, correspondence, property deeds, donations, meeting minutes. People believe libraries hold old stories. They hold proof. Adrian studied her with a new expression. Respect. It was faint, but unmistakable. Then help me find it, he said. Not by becoming the man your father wanted. The sirens grew louder. Adrian looked at his security chief. Leave Tomas. His man appeared startled, but nodded. Elena let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Adrian noticed. You thought I wouldn't listen. I thought you might. That sounds dangerously close to faith. Don't flatter yourself. The police arrived moments later. Questions filled the library. Officers photographed the broken lamps, recovered the abandoned gun, and placed Tomas in handcuffs. He said nothing. Elena gave her statement without mentioning the hidden room. Adrian noticed that too. Near midnight, the last detective finally left. The storm had softened. Elena stood behind the returns desk, filling out an incident report, while Adrian waited by the front doors. You should go home, he said. I have work. Someone broke into your library, which creates paperwork. He looked at the dark windows. You shouldn't be alone tonight. I'm not afraid of being alone. I didn't say you were. The answer disarmed her more than concern would have. Adrian placed a card on the desk. No title, no company name, only a number embossed in black. Call if you remember anything. Elena's fingers rested over the hidden note inside her sleeve. Will you? Will I what? Remember anything? He looked toward the old wing. I already have. He opened the door. Cold air moved through the lobby. Then Elena saw the object lying on the threshold. A silver pendant. A bell beneath a crown. The same symbol from her mother's cedar chest. Adrian picked it up with a handkerchief. A folded strip of paper had been threaded through the chain. He opened it. Elena read the message over his shoulder. Margaret Marlowe did not die. She was taken. Adrian turned the paper over. There was one more line. And she was taken because of him. Below the sentence was a date. Elena's 12th birthday. Elena read the date twice. Her 12th birthday. The day her aunt had taken her to a small bakery across town because the house was too quiet. The day 2 police officers had arrived before the candles were lit. The day every adult in the room had begun lying. Adrian folded the note carefully. Who knew this date mattered? He asked. My aunt, the police, whoever arranged the funeral. And you. Elena looked at the pendant in his hand. The silver bell was scratched along one edge. She remembered tracing that same mark with her thumbnail while kneeling beside her mother's cedar chest. This belonged to her. You're certain? Yes. Adrian studied the dark street beyond the glass doors. Then whoever left it was close enough to watch us. His security team searched the steps, the awning, and the neighboring rooftops. No one found the messenger. Elena locked the pendant inside an evidence envelope and slipped it into the interior pocket of her bag. Adrian noticed. The police should have it. The police filed my mother's death without a body. You believe they were involved. I believe they stopped asking questions. That is not the same thing. It is when someone wants a person forgotten. He did not argue. Outside, a black sedan pulled to the curb. Adrian opened the rear door for her. Elena remained beneath the library awning. I'm not going anywhere with you. Someone knows where you work, what happened to your mother, and the exact date she vanished. That doesn't make your car safe. No, it makes the street unsafe. His answer was frustratingly reasonable. She looked at the men positioned around the vehicle. None wore visible weapons, but every one of them watched the surrounding buildings with disciplined attention. Where are we going? My house. No. It has security. It also has your family. My father is dead. Your driver just tried to kill you. Your grandfather hid a ledger under my library. Your father lied about knowing my mother. Forgive me if the De Luca residence doesn't feel like neutral ground. Adrian closed the car door. There is another place. 20 minutes later, the sedan entered the underground garage of the Bellhaven Grand Hotel. Elena recognized the marble crest above the private elevator. The hotel belonged to one of Adrian's companies. Politicians held fundraisers there. Brides waited years for the ballroom. Rumors claimed the top floor had no official floor plan. Adrian pressed his thumb to a scanner. The elevator rose without displaying numbers. You own a fortress above a hotel? Elena asked. I own the hotel. That wasn't my question. No. The doors opened into a quiet residence of dark wood, stone, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. No family portraits, no trophies, no unnecessary decoration. Nothing that revealed the man who lived there. A woman in her 60s waited near the entryway. Her silver hair was cut neatly at her chin, and her dark blue suit looked more severe than Adrian's. Elena Marlowe, she said. Elena stopped. Adrian's expression hardened. How do you know her? The woman's eyes stayed on Elena. Because she looks exactly like Margaret did at that age. Adrian stepped between them. Who are you? You employ me. You employ me. I employ hundreds of people. That wasn't the question. A flicker of approval passed through the woman's face. Helena Cross, Director of Household Operations. You've worked here for 6 years, Adrian said. Your background was verified. It was manufactured. His security chief reached inside his jacket. Helena did not move. I came here because I knew this night would arrive. Elena gripped the strap of her bag. You knew my mother. I protected her. The room seemed to contract. Where is she? Elena asked. Helena's gaze lowered for the first time. I don't know. Adrian moved closer. Start at the beginning. The beginning is older than either of you. Then choose the part that keeps you alive. Elena turned sharply toward him. Adrian's tone changed by a fraction. The part that keeps everyone alive. Helena walked to the bar and poured herself a glass of water. Her hand trembled only once. In 1986, Vittorio De Luca discovered that judges, police commanders, and city contractors were using his shipping routes to move more than weapons and cash. What were they moving? Elena asked. People. The word landed heavily. Runaways, undocumented workers, women with no families nearby, anyone they believed could disappear without noise. Adrian's face gave nothing away. My grandfather found out. He found records, names, payments, locations. He realized several members of his own organization were involved. The ledger, Elena said. Helena nodded. It listed every official, broker, company, and intermediary connected to the network. Why hide it in the library? Adrian asked. Because Margaret understood archives. She created false catalog entries and divided the evidence into separate collections. No single discovery could expose the whole operation. Elena pictured her mother smiling in the photograph beside Adrian's father. What was his role? Helena's fingers tightened around the glass. Victor De Luca helped her. Adrian's eyes became colder. My father. He was not yet the man you knew. That is not an answer. He wanted to destroy the network. At first. The silence that followed had an edge. What changed? Elena asked. Power. Helena looked toward the city lights. Vittorio planned to turn the evidence over to a federal investigator. Before he could, he vanished. Victor inherited the family. He told Margaret the ledger had to remain hidden until he secured control. But he never exposed it, Adrian said. No. He used it. Helena met his gaze. Yes. Adrian turned away. The movement was small, but Elena saw the blow land. His father had not merely buried evidence. He had turned the names of corrupt men into leverage. Every promotion, contract, and election that followed might have been purchased with silence. Was my mother helping him? Elena asked. No. When she understood what he had become, she tried to take the evidence. The fire, Adrian said. Helena nodded. It was meant to destroy the archive and kill her. Elena's throat tightened. Who started it? Helena did not answer. Adrian faced her again. Say his name. Victor. The city glowed beyond the windows, as if nothing in it had shifted. Elena remembered Adrian telling her that his father had found the man who tried to kill him within 3 days. She wondered how many other crimes Victor had solved because he had arranged them. My mother survived the fire, Elena said. Yes. Then 12 years later, someone took her. She never stopped gathering evidence. She believed Victor had hidden a second list, one that identified the people who inherited the network. Adrian's attention sharpened. Inherited? The old operation did not die. It changed industries, private detention contracts, labor agencies, development projects built with workers whose names never appeared on payroll. Elena thought of sealed city records in the archive, property transfers, shell charities, demolition permits approved overnight. The proof might already be sitting on her shelves. Where was Margaret taken? Adrian asked. An abandoned courthouse annex near the river. Elena stared at Helena. You saw it happen? I arrived after. Then how do you know? Helena reached inside her jacket. Adrian's security chief drew his gun. Slowly, Adrian said. She removed a small cassette tape. A handwritten label covered one side. Elena, AG-12. Elena did not take it. What is that? Your mother recorded it 2 days before she vanished. Why didn't you give it to me? Because she told me not to. Anger rose so quickly, Elena tasted metal. For 14 years, she believed anyone who knew the truth would become a target. I was already a target. Yes. Helena's answer cracked something open. Elena crossed the room and slapped the glass from her hand. It shattered against the stone floor. You watched me bury an empty coffin. I watched from across the street. You let me believe she was dead. I kept you alive. You don't get to call that protection. Helena accepted the words without defending herself. Adrian stepped beside Elena, close enough to steady her without touching. Play the tape, Elena said. An old cassette recorder was brought from a locked cabinet in the study. Adrian said nothing about why he owned one. Elena sat at the long table. The machine clicked as the tape began to turn. Static filled the room. Then her mother spoke. "If you are hearing this, Elena, then I failed to come home." Elena closed her eyes. The voice was older than she remembered, tired, careful, real. "You will be told I died. Let them tell you. Grief will hide you better than fear." A breath trembled through the recording. "I am sorry for every birthday I may miss. I am sorry for every question that will have no answer. None of this happened because of you." Elena covered her mouth. Beside her, Adrian stood completely still. "There is a boy named Adrian De Luca. One day, he may come looking for what his family buried." Adrian's gaze moved to the recorder. "Do not trust his name. Do not fear it either. He was a child when this began, and children should not inherit the guilt of their fathers." The tape clicked softly. "But Adrian carries something his father needs. Victor believes it is a key. He is wrong." A pause. "The key is not something Adrian carries." Her mother's voice lowered. "Adrian is the key." The recording ended. No one spoke. Elena rewound the tape and played the final lines again. "Adrian is the key." "What does that mean?" Elena asked. Helena looked at Adrian's right hand. His silver signet ring. Adrian removed it slowly. The De Luca crest was engraved on the surface, a crowned lion framed by laurel leaves. Helena took the ring and pressed a hidden notch along its inner band. The crest opened. Inside was a tiny metal cylinder. Adrian's expression changed. "My father gave me this ring when I turned 18. He believed Vittorio hid access instructions inside it," Helena said. "But he never opened it?" "He tried. The mechanism responds to heat and pressure in a specific sequence." Adrian looked at the cylinder. "How do you know?" "Margaret designed it." Elena felt another piece of her mother's secret life shift into place. Adrian tipped the cylinder onto the table. A narrow strip of transparent film slid out. Lines of tiny text covered it. Elena held it beneath the desk lamp. Not text. Coordinates. "And a sequence of letters and numbers. Those are archive references," she said. "To the ledger?" Adrian asked. "To pieces of it." Her eyes moved down the list. Municipal bonds, Port Authority minutes, adoption records, sealed court transcripts. One reference stopped her. Marlowe, /closed, 1999. Her own name. "Elena," Adrian said. She pointed. "That is my library accession code." "For what?" "I don't know. The record is sealed." "Who has authority to seal it?" "The library director." Adrian's phone rang. His security chief answered first, listened, then handed it over. Adrian's expression darkened as he heard the voice on the other end. "When?" A pause. "Lock down the building." He ended the call. "Thomas escaped police custody." Elena stood. "How?" "The transport vehicle was struck at an intersection. 2 officers are dead." Elena closed her eyes. Adrian looked at her. "You expected this?" "No. You knew he was working for someone." "I suspected." "Who?" Before Helena could answer, the residence lights went out. The windows turned black. Emergency shutters began descending over the glass. A red security light pulsed above the elevator. Adrian's team drew their weapons. A recorded voice sounded from the ceiling. "Perimeter breach." One of the guards checked the security tablet. 3 intruders in the service corridor. 2 more coming from the hotel kitchen. Adrian handed Elena the ring and the strip of film. "Put these in your bag." "What are you doing?" "Moving you to the safe room." "No. This is not the library." "Exactly. I don't know this building." I do. Gunfire cracked beyond the elevator doors. Adrian's men took positions. Helena grabbed Elena's arm. There is another exit through the study. Adrian turned. Take her. Elena pulled free. You're coming with us. I need to stop them reaching the guest floors. The hotel is evacuated. Not completely. Another burst of gunfire echoed from the corridor. Adrian's face became the one the city feared. Cold, precise, unmoved. Elena, go. She stepped closer. You walked away when your father told you mercy was weakness. His eyes locked on hers. Do not make me walk away now. For 1 second, the violence outside seemed distant. Then Adrian took her hand. They entered the study together. Helena opened a concealed panel behind a shelf of legal books. A steel staircase descended into darkness. The security chief stayed behind with 2 guards, while Adrian led Elena and Helena downward. They had barely reached the lower landing when an explosion shook the wall. Dust filled the stairwell. The door above slammed shut. A light flickered on at the bottom, revealing an underground corridor beneath the hotel. Helena stopped. Someone stood at the far end. Tomas Vale. His shirt was streaked with dried blood. A pistol rested in his hand. Beside him was a woman in a grey coat. Her dark hair had gone almost entirely silver, but Elena recognized the shape of her face from the photograph in the hidden room. From her own reflection, the woman looked at Elena. Her lips parted. Elena. The voice was older, weaker, but it was the same voice from the tape. Elena could not move. Her mother took 1 step forward. Tomas raised the gun and pressed it against Margaret's side. Adrian shifted in front of Elena. Tomas smiled. Now we open the vault. Elena heard her mother's voice and became 12 years old again. Not in memory, in the body. Her knees weakened, her hands went cold. The underground corridor narrowed until there was only the woman in the grey coat and the gun pressed against her ribs. Margaret Marlowe looked thinner than the woman in the photograph. A pale scar crossed one eyebrow. Silver threaded through her dark hair, and exhaustion had settled beneath her eyes. But she was alive. Elena, Margaret said again. Tomas pushed the barrel harder into her side. Touching, he said. We can finish the reunion after Mr. De Luca gives me the ring. Adrian stood in front of Elena, blocking Tomas's line of fire, without making the gesture obvious. You attacked my hotel to obtain something you already knew I had, he said. That suggests you cannot use it alone. Tomas's smile faded. Margaret glanced toward Adrian, Victor's son. Adrian, Elena said, her voice unsteady. Her mother's eyes returned to her. 100 questions crowded Elena's throat. Where had she been? Why had she never returned? Why had she allowed her daughter to mourn her for 14 years? Only one escaped. Did you leave me? Pain moved across Margaret's face. No. Tomas gave a quiet laugh. She left everyone eventually. Adrian's attention never left the gun. The vault, he said. Where is it? Below the old courthouse, Tomas replied. Your grandfather built it before the river tunnels were sealed. And Margaret opens it. No. Tomas looked at Elena. She does. The floor seemed to shift beneath her. Margaret shook her head. He's lying. Am I? Tomas said. Tell her why you catalogued her birth record under a private accession code. Tell her why Vittorio paid for the sealed adoption file. Elena looked at her mother. Margaret's silence answered first. I'm adopted? No. Then what file did you seal? It was not an adoption. Tomas pressed the gun into her coat. Enough. Adrian raised one hand. The signet ring caught the red emergency light. You want this. We leave Margaret here. Tomas smiled again. You're bargaining with the wrong currency. I know what men like you value. You don't know what I value. Control. The word landed cleanly. Tomas's jaw tightened. Adrian continued. You escaped police custody, killed officers, breached a private security system, and brought a hostage underground. You did not do all of that to shoot the only people who can open the vault. Elena saw the calculation behind Tomas's eyes. Adrian had changed the balance without moving an inch. Tomas lowered the gun slightly. Walk, he said. The corridor led beneath the hotel toward an older section of Bellhaven's underground infrastructure. Brick replaced concrete, rusted pipes followed the ceiling, and black water moved through narrow channels beside the walkway. Tomas stayed behind Margaret. Adrian walked beside Elena. Helena followed several paces back, her face pale but composed. Elena's bag rested against her hip. Inside were the ring, the strip of film, and the pendant her mother had worn before vanishing. Her mother was close enough to touch, yet every step between them felt occupied by the missing years. Where have you been? Elena asked. Tomas struck Margaret's shoulder with the gun. No talking. Adrian stopped. The corridor went still. Tomas lifted the weapon toward him. Keep moving. You touch her again, Adrian said, and the ring goes into the water. He held his hand over the channel. Tomas stared at him. Then he shoved Margaret forward without striking her. They continued. Elena looked at Adrian. He gave no sign that he had noticed, but she understood. He was buying time. A steel door appeared at the end of the passage. Tomas entered a code, and the lock released with a deep mechanical thud. Beyond it waited the abandoned courthouse annex. The building smelled of mildew and old paper. Marble floors had cracked under years of neglect. Wooden benches stood beneath sheets of dust, and faded state seals watched from the walls. Elena recognized the place from childhood. My mother brought me here once, she said. Margaret closed her eyes. You were 5. You said we were meeting a friend. We were. Vittorio? Margaret nodded. Tomas motioned them toward a courtroom. The judge's bench had been pulled away from the wall, exposing a circular metal door. A bell beneath a crown was engraved at its center. The vault. 2 armed men stood beside it. One wore a city police jacket. The other wore the insignia of Adrian's security company. Adrian stopped when he recognized him. Caleb. The guard lowered his gaze. Elena remembered the night's first warning. Bodyguard betrayal. Caleb had been one of the men who entered the library after the alarm. He had heard everything. You gave Tomas the hotel access codes, Adrian said. Caleb's mouth tightened. My brother disappeared through one of your labor companies. I don't own labor companies. Your father did. My father is dead. My brother is still missing. Tomas looked pleased. There it is. Every empire eventually meets the bill. Adrian watched Caleb carefully. If your brother was taken, the vault may contain his name. That's why I'm here. No, that's why you were recruited. Caleb's expression shifted. Tomas raised the gun toward Adrian. Open it. Elena stepped forward. How? Margaret answered, before Tomas could stop her. The ring opens the outer mechanism. Your voice opens the inner lock. Elena stared at her. My voice? Vittorio distrusted keys that could be stolen. I designed a phonetic sequence based on a recording of you as a child. You used me as a lock? I used the one voice Victor would never think to search for. Tomas laughed. She always made abandonment sound noble. Margaret flinched. Elena saw it. Not guilt alone. Fear. Tomas knew something her mother did not want revealed. Adrian removed the signet ring and placed it into a narrow recess at the vault's center. The mechanism accepted it with a click. The crowned bell split open. A small speaker emerged. Margaret faced Elena. You have to say the words exactly as you said them then. What words? Margaret's voice broke. Books remember what people bury. Elena remembered. Her mother had taught her the sentence in the courthouse hallway. She had made a game of it, asking Elena to repeat it into an old microphone. Books remember what people bury. Elena stepped toward the speaker. Adrian caught her hand. She looked at him. Once it opens, he said quietly, Thomas no longer needs us. I know. Then wait. For what? His thumb pressed once against her palm. A signal. Elena noticed Helena near the courtroom door. One hand rested beneath her jacket. Not fear, readiness. Adrian had seen it too. Elena turned toward the vault. Books remember what people bury. The speaker crackled. Nothing happened. Tomas's face darkened. Margaret shook her head. The tone is wrong. I'm not 5 anymore. The system adjusts for pitch. It needs the second phrase. You didn't mention a second phrase. Margaret looked at Tomas. He pushed the barrel against her spine. Say it. Margaret's eyes filled with a warning. Elena, don't. Tomas pulled back the hammer. The phrase, Elena said. Her mother whispered, blood does not decide who we become. Adrian went still beside her. Elena spoke both sentences. Books remember what people bury. Blood does not decide who we become. The vault unlocked. Metal bolts withdrew, one by one, inside the wall. The round door opened 6 inches. Tomas shoved Margaret aside and moved toward it. Helena drew a pistol. Caleb turned faster. He fired. Helena fell against the courtroom benches. Margaret screamed. Adrian struck Tomas's wrist before he could aim. The gun discharged into the ceiling. Plaster rained down as they crashed into the judge's bench. Elena ran toward Helena. Blood spread across the older woman's blue jacket. Stay with me. Helena pressed something into Elena's hand. A small recording device. He confessed, she whispered. Everything since the hotel. Caleb approached with his gun raised. Elena looked up. His face was stricken. I didn't mean to hit her. You fired. She had a weapon. She was trying to stop a murderer. Caleb's gun shook. Behind him, Adrian drove Tomas into the vault door. Tomas slashed a hidden blade across Adrian's side. Adrian staggered. Elena rose. Caleb's weapon swung toward her. Don't, he said. Elena held up the recorder. Tomas admitted he used you. He can still find my brother. No, he can only keep you desperate. Caleb looked toward Tomas. The hesitation lasted 1 second. It was enough. Margaret seized the fallen police baton from the floor and struck Caleb's wrist. The gun dropped. Elena kicked it beneath the benches. Caleb grabbed Margaret by the coat. Elena slammed the recording device against the fire alarm panel. The old courthouse bell began ringing. A violent metallic roar filled the room. Caleb turned toward the sound. Margaret drove her elbow into his chest and broke free. Across the courtroom, Adrian had Tomas pinned against the vault. Blood darkened Adrian's shirt. Tomas smiled through split lips. You think your father was the monster. Adrian tightened his grip. He learned from Vittorio. My grandfather tried to expose the network. Your grandfather built it. The words cut through the bell. Margaret froze. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Tomas laughed. Tell him. Margaret said nothing. Tell him who selected the first names, Tomas continued. Tell him who decided which people were useful and which could disappear. Adrian looked at Margaret. My grandfather? He created the routes, she said. At first, he claimed they were for witnesses, defectors, people fleeing violence. And later, he sold access. Elena stared at her mother. The entire story rearranged itself. Vittorio had not discovered the machine. He had built it. Then why create the ledger? Adrian asked. Insurance, Margaret said. He recorded everyone who used the network, so no one could move against him. Thomas pushed against Adrian's grip. Victor didn't corrupt his father's evidence. He inherited his business. Adrian's face emptied. Elena saw the darkest possibility enter him. Every act of protection in his family had concealed ownership. Every rescue might have been a transaction. Every disappearance, a calculation. Thomas drove his knee into Adrian's wound. Adrian fell. Thomas grabbed the ring from the mechanism and ran into the vault. The door began closing behind him. Margaret rushed forward. If it seals, he'll destroy the records. Elena reached the narrowing gap. Adrian caught her waist. No, we need the evidence. He has a gun. And you're bleeding. The vault door continued closing. 2 feet. 18 inches. Adrian pulled Elena back and forced himself upright. Then Caleb ran past them. He slipped through the gap seconds before the door sealed. A gunshot sounded inside. Then another. Silence. The courtroom bell stopped. Helena's breathing came shallow behind them. Margaret knelt beside her. Elena pressed both hands against Adrian's wound. Blood warmed her palms. You need a hospital. Not yet. That was not a suggestion. The vault can be opened again. The ring is inside. Margaret looked toward the center mechanism. There is a second release. Where? Elena asked. Vittorio built it into the courthouse records room. A pounding sounded from inside the vault. 3 strikes. Pause. 3 more. Caleb. Alive. Adrian leaned against Elena, his weight heavier now. Open it. She looked at the blood soaking his shirt. You could die, then be angry after. Her hands trembled. He covered one of them with his. Elena. She met his eyes. There was no command in them, only trust. It frightened her more than the gunfire had. Margaret led Elena through a side door into the records room. Rows of ruined case files sagged under water damage. She removed a loose floorboard beneath a cabinet. A manual lever lay below. Elena pulled it. Nothing happened. Again, Margaret said. Elena used both hands. The lever moved halfway, then locked. A red light appeared above the vault. Margaret's face went white. What? The inner system has been altered. By Thomas? No. A speaker crackled in the courtroom. Victor De Luca's voice filled the building. Adrian stared at the vault. His father had been dead for 7 years. If this recording is playing, the archive has been opened by an unauthorized heir. Elena returned to Adrian's side. The voice continued. The documents inside are not evidence. They are leverage. Used correctly, they guarantee control of Bellhaven for another generation. Adrian's jaw tightened. Used sentimentally, they guarantee the destruction of this family. A pause. I know you will hesitate, Adrian. You always mistook conscience for courage. Elena felt his hand close into a fist. For that reason, I created a final safeguard. A mechanical sound began behind the walls. Margaret ran toward the vault. No. What is it? Elena asked. Fuel lines. Adrian understood first. The vault will burn. Margaret pulled at the sealed door. Everything is inside. Names, locations, testimony. And Caleb, Elena said. Smoke slipped through the edges of the vault. Someone struck the inside again. Slower now. Adrian looked around the courtroom, measuring distances and structure. The river channel runs beneath us. Margaret shook her head. The flood release was sealed decades ago. Can it be opened? From the lower tunnel. Where? She pointed toward a stairwell behind the jury box. Adrian tried to move. His knees nearly gave way. Elena caught him. You cannot go. If the channel floods, it may extinguish the fire. It may also drown everyone in the building. Thomas is destroying proof that could free hundreds of people. And I am not trading your life for paper. Adrian looked at her blood-covered hands. It isn't paper. No, it is justice. And justice does not require you to die alone in a basement. For the first time, the control in his face broke. Not weakness. Something far more dangerous. He believed her. Margaret took the key from Caleb's fallen weapon belt. I know the lower tunnel. Elena looked at her mother. You just came back. I know. You do not get to disappear again. Margaret's eyes shone. I was trying to keep you safe. You kept me grieving. The words landed between them. Margaret nodded once, accepting the wound. You're right. No excuse. No defense. Only truth. Elena swallowed hard. We go together. Adrian shook his head. Elena, she turned on him. You asked me to trust you in the library. Trust me now. Smoke thickened near the vault ceiling. Adrian removed his coat and pressed it against his wound. 5 minutes, he said. If the channel does not open, we leave. Margaret led them down the jury stairwell. The lower tunnel was half submerged. Black water reached Elena's calves, then her knees. Pipes shook overhead as the vault's fire system fed fuel into the sealed room. At the end of the tunnel stood a rusted wheel. Margaret gripped it. It did not move. Elena joined her. Together they pulled. Metal screamed. The wheel turned 1 inch, then another. Adrian braced himself against the wall and added his strength. The old floodgate opened. River water crashed through the tunnel. The force knocked Elena backward. Adrian caught her, but the current swept both of them off their feet. Margaret vanished beneath the water. Mom! Elena fought toward where she had disappeared. Adrian grabbed a hanging chain with one hand and held Elena with the other. Margaret surfaced near the floodgate, gasping. A deep boom shook the courthouse. Water surged through the vault system. The fire alarm changed pitch. Then the lights went black. Elena heard Adrian's breath beside her. Too shallow. Adrian? His grip loosened. She reached for him in the darkness. His hand slipped beneath the water. By the time the emergency lights returned, his eyes were closed. Blood spread around him in the current. Elena! Margaret's voice came from somewhere beyond the rushing water. Elena tightened both arms around Adrian and dragged his face above the surface. His body was frighteningly heavy, his head falling against her shoulder as the current pulled at them. Help me! Margaret fought through the water and caught Adrian beneath one arm. Together, they pulled him toward the narrow service ledge along the tunnel wall. The emergency lights flickered. Above them, the courthouse groaned as water forced its way through pipes sealed for decades. Elena pressed her fingers to Adrian's neck. Nothing. No. She moved them again, searching. There. A faint pulse. Too slow. He's alive, she said. Margaret tore a strip from the lining of her coat. Keep pressure on the wound. Elena pressed both hands against Adrian's side. His blood had turned the water around them dark. Adrian, she bent close to his face. Open your eyes. No response. You do not get to order everyone else to survive and then leave. His lashes did not move. Margaret wrapped the cloth around his waist and pulled it tight. Adrian's body jerked faintly at the pressure. Elena almost cried from relief. A muffled explosion sounded above them. Then a metal alarm began to pulse. Margaret looked toward the stairwell. The fire suppression system is failing. The vault? Flooded, but not fully. We need to get out. Elena looked at Adrian. He can't walk. I know. Together, they lifted him. Every step through the water became a battle. Elena took most of his weight across her shoulders, while Margaret kept pressure on the wound. At the base of the stairwell, smoke drifted down from the courtroom. They had climbed only 4 steps when someone appeared above them. Caleb. His face was streaked with soot. Blood ran from his temple. One arm hung uselessly at his side. Elena stopped. Margaret reached for the pistol, tucked into the back of her coat. Caleb raised his empty hand. Thomas is dead. Move, Margaret said. I can help. You shot Helena. His eyes closed for half a second. I know. Behind him, flames flared across the courtroom ceiling. Caleb came down the stairs and took Adrian's weight without waiting for permission. Elena held on. If you drop him, I won't. They climbed. The courtroom had become a drowned ruin. Water covered the marble floor. Smoke rolled across the ceiling. The vault door stood open now, bent outward by the pressure. Inside, shelves had collapsed. Boxes floated in black water. Thomas lay face down near the rear wall, one hand still gripping a scorched folder. Caleb looked toward the body. He tried to burn everything after the flood reached us. The fumes ignited. And you? Elena asked. I chose the door. The answer carried more shame than relief. A section of the ceiling cracked. Adrian stirred. Elena turned toward him. His eyes opened only slightly. The records, he whispered. They're still there. Not all. You're alive. That is enough for now. His gaze found hers through the smoke. No, he said. It isn't. Elena understood what he meant. Names were still inside. People who had been taken. Families who had waited years for answers. Justice was not paper, but without proof. Power would call every survivor a liar. She looked into the vault. Water reached almost to her waist inside. Fire crawled along the highest shelves, where sealed evidence boxes had remained dry. Margaret saw her decision forming. No, you stayed away from me for 14 years because of those records. I stayed away because men used everyone I loved as leverage. And what did it cost? Margaret's face tightened. Everything. Then help me make it mean something. A wooden beam crashed across the courtroom doors. Their exit disappeared behind sparks. Caleb swore. The tunnel is the only way out now. Elena stepped toward the vault. Adrian caught her wrist. His grip was weak. It still stopped her. I'll go, he said. You can barely stand. I know which files matter. So do I. He looked at her. Elena pulled the transparent film from her bag. Water had not damaged it. The archive references are a map. Margaret took the strip and held it beneath the emergency light. 3 boxes, she said. Court transcripts, port records, witness index. Can those prove the network existed? Elena asked. They can prove who funded it and where people were sent. Caleb eased Adrian onto a bench above the waterline. Tell me what to find. Margaret studied him. You expect trust. No. He looked toward Helena, still unconscious near the jury box where they had left her. I expect a chance to do one thing that isn't unforgivable. Elena pointed at the vault. Blue court box, red port ledger, black witness index. Caleb entered the water. Margaret followed. Elena stayed beside Adrian, pressing the cloth against his wound, while smoke thickened around them. His skin had gone pale. You knew the vault might kill you, she said. I knew Thomas would kill more people if he left with it. That is not an answer. He looked at her hand over his wound. My father spent his life proving that sacrifice was for fools. He said the clever man always made someone else pay. Elena's throat tightened. And you wanted to prove him wrong. No. His voice weakened. I wanted you to survive. The honesty struck deeper than any declaration could have. Elena leaned closer. You don't know me well enough to die for me. I know you walked into a hidden room when every instinct told you not to. That sounds like poor judgment. I know you challenged armed men to protect records they would have destroyed. Occupational hazard. I know you looked at what my family had done and still believed I could choose differently. His hand moved beneath hers. His fingers closed around her wrist. No one ever gave me that before. Elena's eyes burned. Then live long enough to deserve it. A faint breath that might have been laughter left him. Inside the vault, Caleb shouted, I found the court box. Margaret appeared behind him, carrying a red ledger wrapped in oilcloth. The flames spread lower. Where is the witness index? Elena called. Caleb disappeared behind a collapsed shelf. A gunshot cracked inside the vault. Elena instinctively covered Adrian. Margaret froze. Then Caleb stumbled back into view. Tomas was no longer lying on the floor. He stood behind Caleb, burned across one side of his face, the pistol shaking in his hand. You should have died in the transport, Tomas said. Caleb pressed one hand against his stomach. You first. Tomas aimed at Margaret. Adrian tried to rise. Elena pushed him back. Tomas fired. Margaret dropped into the water. Mom! Elena ran. She reached the vault as Caleb threw himself at Tomas. They struck the shelving together. The weakened metal gave way. Boxes, chains, and burning wood collapsed over both men. Tomas screamed once. Then the water swallowed the flames. Elena reached Margaret. Blood marked the sleeve of her coat, but the bullet had only grazed her upper arm. I'm all right, Margaret said. You were shot. I have had worse reunions. The sentence was so unexpected. Elena stared at her. Margaret almost smiled. For the first time, Elena saw the mother she remembered beneath the secrets. A violent crack sounded above them. The courthouse ceiling began to collapse. Caleb emerged from beneath the shelving, dragging the black witness index with his good arm. Tomas did not move. Caleb pushed the box toward Elena. Take it. What about you? A length of metal had pinned his leg. He looked toward the doorway, then at Helena. Get her out. We can free you. No time. Margaret tried to lift the beam. It did not move. Caleb caught her wrist. My brother. If his name is here, I'll find him, Elena said. Caleb looked at her. Daniel Mercer. They changed his surname after he was taken. Elena repeated it. Daniel Mercer. Promise me. I promise. Caleb released Margaret's hand. Go. Another section of ceiling fell. This time, the heat drove them back. Elena wanted to argue. She saw in Caleb's face that he had already chosen. Not redemption. A debt. She took the witness index. Margaret carried the red ledger. Elena dragged Helena toward the stairwell, while Adrian forced himself upright, one hand against the wall. They reached the lower tunnel seconds before the courtroom collapsed. The impact sealed the stairwell behind them. Darkness swallowed the passage. For several moments, there was only water, coughing, and the sound of stone settling. Then Adrian's voice came through the dark. Elena. I'm here. His hand found hers. They moved through the tunnel together. Emergency crews reached them through the hotel service passage 18 minutes later. Adrian was taken directly into surgery. Helena survived. Margaret needed 12 stitches. Elena sat outside the operating room with dried blood on her dress and the black witness index on her lap. Police officers filled the corridor, not Bellhaven officers, federal agents. Helena's recording had already been copied and transmitted to 3 separate offices before the courthouse attack. She had planned for betrayal better than any of them realized. At dawn, the first arrests began. A deputy mayor was taken from his home. 2 judges were removed from their chambers. The police commissioner attempted to leave the country and was stopped at a private airfield. By noon, reporters surrounded the Bellhaven Grand Hotel. By evening, the story had a name: the Bell Crown Network. Elena refused every interview. She stayed outside Adrian's room. When the surgeon finally appeared, his expression was tired but calm. The bullet did not strike him. The blade damaged an artery, but we repaired it. Elena stood. He'll live. He will need time. She sat again, only after the surgeon left. Margaret remained at the other end of the corridor. Neither had spoken since the courthouse. Elena stared at her hands. They told me you died in an accident. I know. I waited by the front window for months. Margaret looked down. I know. You watched the funeral. Yes. You could have come to me. I believed Victor had people watching you. He did. I thought grief would make you useless to them. It made me alone. Margaret's face broke. For 14 years, Elena had imagined this moment in 100 different ways. In some versions, she ran into her mother's arms. In others, she turned away. She had never imagined simply sitting across from her, too exhausted for either. I don't know how to forgive you, Elena said. I don't expect you to. I don't know how to call you Mum. You don't have to. Margaret's hands trembled in her lap. But I would like the chance to earn whatever comes next. Elena looked toward Adrian's hospital room. Earning trust takes time. Yes. Respect. Honesty. Sacrifice. Margaret nodded. Elena recognized the sequence. It was the same bridge Adrian had crossed toward her. Not love first. Proof first. Then start with the truth, Elena said. For the next 4 hours, Margaret told her everything. Vittorio had created the original routes. Victor had expanded them. Margaret and Helena had spent years moving witnesses out of danger while collecting evidence against the network. When Victor discovered Margaret's plan, he staged her death and imprisoned her in a private medical facility under a false name. Helena found her years later, but by then the network had grown too powerful to expose through a single testimony. So Margaret stayed hidden and continued gathering names. It was not enough to heal the missing years, but it was true. That mattered. 3 days later, Adrian opened his eyes fully. Elena was reading beside his bed. He looked at the book in her hands. Romance? Municipal corruption. Disappointing. You've been unconscious. Your standards are unreliable. His gaze moved to the chair where Margaret had fallen asleep. She stayed. Yes. And you? Elena closed the book. I had questions. For me? 1. He waited. Why did your father's recording call you an unauthorized heir? Adrian looked toward the window. Because I am not Victor's biological son. Elena said nothing. My mother was engaged to another man before Victor. She became pregnant. Victor married her anyway, and raised me as his heir. Did you know? Since I was 16. Who was your biological father? Vittorio's federal investigator. Elena understood. The man who had been meant to receive the evidence. The man who vanished before Vittorio did. Your father killed him, she said. Victor ordered it. Adrian's voice held no hesitation now. The ring was never meant for a De Luca heir. It was meant for the investigator's son. A final safeguard. A power reversal Victor had never understood. The empire had passed not to his blood, but to the child of the man he murdered. What will you do with the family businesses? Elena asked. Dissolve the companies tied to the network. Place the legitimate holdings under independent oversight. Use the assets to compensate survivors. That will make enemies. I already have enemies. You'll have more. Adrian looked at her. Will that frighten you away? Elena rested her hand on the edge of his bed. I was frightened the first night you knocked on the library door. You hid it well. I wasn't hiding it. No? I opened the door anyway. His fingers moved over hers, carefully, as though trust were something breakable. 6 months later, the Bellhaven Public Library reopened its restored West Wing. The hidden archive beneath the building became the Marlowe Center for Missing Persons and Historical Justice. Margaret worked there 3 mornings a week. Some days, she and Elena spoke easily. Some days, they did not. Both counted as progress. Elena became director of the Survivor Compensation Foundation. Daniel Mercer was found alive in Oregon under another name. He had a wife, 2 children, and no memory of Caleb. Elena told him about his brother anyway. Promises mattered. Caleb's name was added to the center's memorial, not as a hero and not as a villain, but as a man whose final choice saved evidence that freed others. Adrian arrived late to the opening ceremony. He wore a dark suit and no signet ring. Reporters shouted questions as he crossed the marble lobby, but he ignored them. Elena stood beneath the restored archway, wearing the silver bell pendant at her throat. You missed the speeches, she said. I heard yours from the entrance. You were hiding. I was avoiding applause. You funded half the restoration. An anonymous donor did. His accountants are terrible at anonymity. Adrian looked around the crowded library. Children sat beneath the old windows. Survivors spoke quietly with investigators. Families searched the new digital registry for names they had nearly stopped hoping to find. The city remembers, he said. Elena touched the pendant. Books remember what people bury. His gaze returned to her. And blood does not decide who we become. No. She stepped closer. Choices do. Adrian had protected her before she trusted him. He had listened when power would have been easier. He had risked everything without asking her to become smaller beside him. Elena had admired him only after she respected him. She had trusted him only after he earned it. And love had arrived so quietly that neither of them could say which moment had first opened the door. Perhaps it had been in the library, when he knocked instead of forcing his way inside. Perhaps it had been when she refused to let him become his father. Perhaps it had been in the tunnel, when his hand found hers in the dark. Adrian touched the pendant at her throat. Does it still open anything? Only one thing. What? Elena took his hand and placed it over her heart. His expression changed. The coldness the city knew disappeared first. Then the restraint. What remained was not the feared heir of a criminal empire, only a man who had chosen what he would become. He bent toward her, giving her every chance to step away. Elena closed the distance. Around them, the library continued breathing. Pages turned, children laughed, old pipes sighed behind restored walls, and beneath the floor, where powerful men had once hidden the names of the forgotten, the truth remained protected in light.